Long ago, at the edge of a forest where the wind spoke sadly through the tree branches at night, there stood a small and weary house. From the outside, it looked like an old chest stubbornly refusing to collapse. Its wooden walls had darkened with age, and some of the roof tiles had slipped from their places. The chimney often smoked, but that smoke was not a sign of abundance. It was a warning of poverty. In this house lived a woodcutter, his wife, and their 2 children. The woodcutter's hands had grown hard from gripping his axe. The deep lines between his fingers seemed to carry the weight of many years. Every morning before sunrise, he would wake, lift his axe onto his shoulder, and walk into the depths of the forest. Each step was taken with the hope of bringing a piece of bread back home. But the forest had long since withdrawn its generosity. The trees were still there, yet firewood was worth nothing, and the few coins he earned were not enough to buy bread. His wife, meanwhile, could not sleep at night. She would turn from side to side in bed, unable to silence her thoughts in the stillness of the house. The soup simmering in the pot grew thinner with each passing day, and the children's growing hunger turned into a fear that gnawed at her. Hunger, after a while, hardened not only the stomach but the heart as well. Hansel and Gretel slept in the quietest corner of the house. Hansel was 1 year older than his sister. He was a bright-eyed, sharp-minded boy who quietly observed everything and never failed to listen to the conversations of the adults. Gretel was younger. She had a tender heart and eyes that filled with tears easily. She still saw the world through the lens of fairy tales. One evening, the woodcutter returned home empty-handed. He leaned his axe against the door and stepped inside with heavy feet. The bread on the table was no longer enough even to be shared. His wife stood by the pot and slowly set the spoon down. "This cannot go on," she said, her voice unusually firm. "Tomorrow we will have nothing left." The woodcutter lowered his head. He remained silent for a while, then whispered, "I am doing everything I can." The woman took a deep breath, as if the words were knotted in her throat. "The children, we cannot feed them." These words slipped through the thin walls of the house and reached Hansel's ears. He sat up in his bed. Gretel was still asleep. The woman continued, "We take them into the forest. We leave them there. Maybe someone will find them. Maybe their fate will be kinder than ours." The woodcutter's heart ached. "They are my children," he said, his voice trembling. "How can I leave them alone in the forest?" "Is starving to death better?" the woman replied. "We will all perish together." Silence fell upon the house, a silence that whispered the decision had already been made. Hansel quietly climbed out of bed. Moonlight illuminated the small stones near the window. He stepped outside. The ground beneath his feet was cool. His eyes caught the glimmer of small white stones scattered around the house. He bent down and picked one up. It was cold in his palm, yet full of hope. Hansel filled his pockets with stones. Each one was like a star that would guide the way back home. Early the next morning, before the sun had risen, the woodcutter woke the children with a sorrowful face. "We are going to the forest," he said, "to cut wood." Gretel was delighted. The forest had always felt like a fairy tale to her. Hansel, however, remained silent. It was as if he knew what was coming. A fear he could not fully name settled in his heart. They set out on the path. As the trees grew denser, the forest began to feel more frightening. The birdsong faded away. As he walked, the woodcutter tried not to look back at his children. With every step, his heart grew heavier, burdened by the cruel decision he carried. Hansel secretly reached into his pockets. Every few steps, he dropped a stone onto the ground, one by one. Each stone reminded him of the moonlight. After a while, the woodcutter stopped, swallowed hard, and said, "Stay here. I will go a little farther to cut wood." The children nodded in agreement. But the woodcutter did not return. The sun climbed high, then sank low. The forest grew dark. Tears filled Gretel's eyes. "Hansel," she said, "won't father come back?" Hansel took her hand. "Do not be afraid," he said calmly. "I know the way. We will go home." When night fell, the moon rose into the sky. Its light revealed the stones scattered across the ground, one by one. Holding Gretel's hand, Hansel began to follow them. After a long journey, they saw their house. With their last remaining strength, they ran toward it. When they knocked on the door, the woman stepped back in shock. The woodcutter's eyes filled with tears as he embraced his children. But this happiness did not last long, for hunger was still there. Although they had returned inside the house, Hansel immediately realized that the night brought no peace. The walls were the same, the hearth was the same, but an unseen gloom wandered through the air. Hunger had settled into the house once again. Silent, patient, and stubborn. The woman said nothing for several days after the children returned. But her gaze had changed. Each time she looked into the pot, her face grew a little harder. Each time she stirred with the spoon, her shoulders stiffened a little more. The woodcutter, on the other hand, had begun to show more affection to the children. He stroked Hansel's head and combed Gretel's hair. One morning, only a thin piece of bread remained in the house. The woman cut it in two, then stopped. She thought for a moment, then made the pieces even smaller. Hansel noticed this. Gretel did not. Worn down by hunger, she saw the small bite in her hand as a great gift. That night, the whispers of the woodcutter and his wife wandered through the house once again. This time Hansel was fully awake. He wanted to go out and collect stones, but the door was locked. He went to the window. The moon was there, but there were no shining stones on the ground. This time there are no stones, he thought. But Hansel's mind worked quickly. He looked at the bread lying on the table. It was small, hard, and stale. He slowly took it in his hand and put it into his pocket. The bread was crumbling. Hansel was aware of that. But he had no other choice. The next morning, the same words were spoken again. Once more, the forest, once more the excuse of cutting wood. This time, Gretel felt uneasy deep inside. When they stepped onto the forest path, her heart tightened. The trees no longer felt like a fairy tale to her. As Hansel walked, he crumbled the bread in his pocket. Small crumbs fell to the ground. Each one was a piece of hope. But crumbs were not like stones. The wind scattered them, and birds noticed and pecked at them. As the walk grew longer, the forest became darker and quieter. Their father stopped again. He spoke the same words again. "Wait here." This time Gretel cried. "Don't go, father," she said. "Please don't go." The woodcutter paused for a moment. He closed his eyes. He could not bear to see his children crying. Then he turned his back and left. The sound of his footsteps vanished among the trees. The children waited. The sun rose. Then it fell. The forest was wrapped in the shadow of night. But the woodcutter did not return. Hansel stood up. "Let's go home," he said. Gretel said, "Please, I'm very scared." They searched for the crumbs. But the crumbs were gone. The birds had long finished their work. The wind had erased what remained. There was nothing left to mark the path. Gretel fell to her knees. "We are lost," she said in a trembling voice. Hansel looked around. The trees all looked alike. Every direction was the same. For the first time, fear settled inside him as well. They spent the night in the forest. The ground was hard and just as cold. The howling of wolves came from afar. Gretel pressed close to Hansel. "Will we return home?" she asked. Hansel could not answer. When morning came, the hunger weighed even heavier. They began to walk. They did not know where they were going. They were simply moving forward. Their feet ached, their knees trembled. Just as they were about to lose all hope, they saw something among the trees. Something shining. Walls gleaming in the sunlight. As they drew closer, they could not believe their eyes. It was a house. But it was not an ordinary house. Its walls seemed to be made of bread. Its windows were of sugar. Its roof covered with cake. Colorful candies lined the edges of the door. Gretel's eyes sparkled. "Hansel, is this a dream?" Hansel hesitated. Hunger had taken precedence over reason. He broke off a piece and tasted it. It was real. The children could not resist and began to eat. From the walls, the windows, the roof. Just then a voice came from inside. Thin, old but sweet. "Who is nibbling on my house?" Hansel and Gretel froze. Then the door opened. From inside came an old woman, leaning on her cane. Her hair was snow-white. Her eyes were small but they gleamed. There was a smile on her face. "Oh, poor children," she said. "You must be hungry. Come inside. Let me give you food." Gretel stepped back. Hansel hesitated. He looked at Gretel, felt a pang in his heart, and hunger won. They went inside. The inside of the house was as sweet as the outside. On the table were milk, bread and cake. The children ate. They were full. For the first time in days, their stomachs were satisfied. The old woman watched them. Her smile never faded. But her eyes never smiled. After taking the children inside, the old woman slowly closed the door. The sound the door made as it shut sent a chill through Hansel, but he dismissed it as unease left over from hunger. The house was warm. The cold of the forest outside did not exist here. The scent of sugar drifting from the walls was sweet enough to make one dizzy. The woman placed more food on the table. "Eat, my little ones," she said. "You are weak. You are safe here." Gretel ate timidly. With every bite, she remembered her mother's pot, and her eyes filled with tears. Hansel, however, was more cautious. He studied his surroundings, watching the woman's every movement. Her smile was fixed, her voice gentle, but there was something in her gaze that could not be understood. After the meal, the woman showed them where they would sleep. Soft bed, clean blankets. For children who had slept on the ground for days, it was like a palace. Gretel fell asleep at once. Hansel closed his eyes, but he could not sleep. As the night deepened, silence ruled inside the house. Soft creaking sounds came from between the wooden boards. When Hansel opened his eyes, he saw the woman's shadow. She was moving slowly around the room. The sound of her cane was steady like a heartbeat. The woman came to Hansel's side. She reached out her hand. Hansel froze. Her fingers were cold. The woman took Hansel's wrist, then slid her fingers toward the child's hand. Hansel held his breath. "You are thin," the woman whispered. "But you will be." When morning came, everything changed. Hansel woke up behind iron bars. He was inside a small, narrow cage. He tried to stand but hit his head. Panicked, he looked around. Gretel was gone. "Gretel!" he shouted. The woman appeared. She was no longer smiling. Her face had taken on a sly expression. "Do not shout," she said. "Your sister is here. She is working." Hansel clutched the iron bars of the cage. "Let us go," he said. "We did nothing to you." The woman laughed. That laughter drowned out all the sweet smells in the house. "I have done nothing to you either," she said. "Not yet." Gretel came out of the kitchen. She was holding a broom. Her face was pale. Her eyes were filled with fear. The woman pushed her forward. "She will work," she said. "And you will be fed." Hansel began to understand. The woman was feeding him, fattening him up. Gretel, meanwhile, was doing the housework, cleaning the oven, carrying firewood. As the days passed, more food was placed before Hansel. Less was placed before Gretel. Every day, the woman came to Hansel and told him to stretch his hand out through the bars of the cage. "Hold out your finger," she said. Hansel was clever. He had noticed that the woman's eyes did not see well. He hid a thin bone he had found on the ground. Each time he held out that bone. "Still too thin," the woman would say. "We must wait a little longer." Gretel grew weaker with each passing day. But something was growing inside her, something stronger than fear. Courage. One day, the woman told Gretel to light the oven. "We will bake bread," she said. "Look inside and see if it is hot enough." Gretel understood what she meant. Her heart began to race. But she did not show it on her face. She approached the oven. looked inside, then turned back. "I do not understand," she said. "I do not know how to look." The woman grumbled angrily. "Foolish girl," she said. Leaning on her cane, she bent toward the oven. "This is how you look." That moment time stood still. Gretel gathered all her strength. She pushed the woman. The woman lost her balance. She screamed. She fell into the flames. The door slammed shut. The house trembled. Candies fell from the walls. The screams coming from inside the oven stopped after a short while. Gretel stepped back. She was trembling. Then she ran. She came to Hansel's cage. She opened the iron lock. Hansel stepped out. The two siblings embraced each other. The house was silent now. But this silence was not born of fear. It was born of freedom. After the oven door closed, the air inside the house changed. The rooms that had just been filled with sweet scents were now wrapped in a dark silence. Hansel and Gretel stayed where they were for a while. They did not know exactly what to do. Freedom had come suddenly. Sometimes, even when one is saved, one does not know which way to go. Hansel first stopped in front of the cage. He touched the iron bars. "It's over," he said. "We are free now." Gretel nodded, but her eyes filled with tears. "Let's go," she said. "The sooner we get away from this house, the better." Just as they were about to leave, Hansel stopped. He noticed things shining inside the house. On the shelves, inside chests, under the table, there were gold, silver, and colorful stones. The witch had gathered not only children, but everyone who had crossed her path over the years. "Let's take these," Hansel said. "We might need them." Gretel hesitated. Then she nodded. They filled their small pockets and Gretel's apron with valuable things. Each one was heavy but worth it. This time, their burden did not carry them toward fear, but toward the future. They opened the door. When they stepped outside, the forest greeted them in silence. The trees were still tall, the shadows still deep, but the children were no longer the same children. Fear had given way to a determined courage. Hansel took the first step. "Let's go east," he said. "If we follow the sun, we will find a way." Their walk, which lasted for days, began. The forest seemed endless. Sometimes they came upon a stream, sometimes they found wild fruits. At night, they slept pressed close to each other. Gretel cried at times. Hansel did not silence her. Instead, he held her, because crying reminded them that they were still strong together. One night, they woke in a place where the forest was thinner. Sound came from afar. It was not a bird's call. It was not a human voice either. But it was familiar. Hansel listened closely. "The sound of water," he said. "It must be a river." When morning came, they walked on. The trees opened up. Before them stretched a wide river. Beyond the water there was open land. The forest ended there. But the river was deep. Gretel stopped. "We can't cross," she said. Hansel looked around. After a while they saw an old white duck. The duck approached the children. Its eyes were calm. Gretel knelt down. "Can you take us across?" she whispered. The duck made no sound, but stayed at the edge of the water. Hansel crossed first. Then he returned. He took Gretel. At last both of them crossed. The duck quietly swam away. They were now outside the forest. The land was more open. The sky was wider. Path appeared. The path seemed to lead to a familiar place. Hansel's heart began to beat faster, and his steps quickened. And then they saw the house. That old weary house still standing. Gretel ran. She reached the door. She raised her hand but could not knock. Hansel came beside her. Together they opened the door. Inside was their father. His hair had turned gray, his shoulders had slumped. When the door opened, he lifted his head. He could not believe his eyes. "Hansel! Gretel!" He stood up. He embraced his children. His tears would not stop. "Your mother," he began but then stopped. "She is gone." He told them that after leaving the children in the forest, the woman had fallen ill and died. The woodcutter had been left alone. Hunger was still there, but regret was greater. Hansel and Gretel placed the gold from their pockets onto the table. That table was full for the first time. There was no more hunger. But more importantly, they were no longer alone. After the door of the house closed, the silence inside felt unfamiliar to Hansel and Gretel. It was different from the silence of the forest. In the forest, silence was threatening. Here, it was weary. The hearth was cold, the table was old, the walls were the same, yet everything looked a little more faded. Their father did not speak for a long time. He sat down, facing his children. His hands rested on his knees. When he lifted his head, his eyes were full. "The day I left you," he said, "I could not come back. My feet carried me home, but my heart stayed there." That day, the woodcutter had returned home for the first time without cutting any wood. Gretel listened in silence. Hansel did not speak. Some words do not ask for an answer. As he spoke of the woman's death, the woodcutter's voice trembled. He could not clearly remember when the illness had begun, nor how it had ended. Hunger gnawed at a person's memory as well. He only remembered how the house had grown quieter and quieter, how the pot had stopped boiling altogether. That night, for the first time in a long while, the children slept safely beneath a roof. But sleep did not come easily. In her dream, Gretel was in the forest again. This time, the trees were not made of sugar. They were bare and dark. Hansel in his dream was inside the cage, but the door was open. He stood there, caught between leaving and staying. When morning came, a different light filled the house. Hansel looked at the gold left on the table. "This is not only for food," he said. "It is so that no one will ever go hungry again." Their father nodded. That day, for the first time, the woodcutter did not go to the forest alone. Hansel went with him. When the woodcutter took the axe in his hands, his grip was still strong, but he was no longer in a hurry. He chose which trees to cut. He was no longer fighting the forest. Instead, he was trying to come to an understanding with it. Gretel stayed at home. She cleaned the house and opened the windows, or filled the rooms. It was like a place breathing again after being closed for a long time. She poured water into the pot. As the water boiled, she listened to its sound. That sound gave her hope. As the days passed, the house began to change. Hunger gave way to a cautious abundance. The bread on the table increased, but no one wasted it. Hansel still gathered crumbs. Some habits are born of fear and do not die easily. Gretel, meanwhile, began to fall asleep later at night. She would sit by the fire and watch the flames. She thought of the witch's oven. At times, the weight of what she had done pressed down on her shoulders. But then she remembered Hansel's face, the moment he stepped out of the cage. That moment was the answer to everything. Their father no longer looked at them as he once had. He no longer saw them as small people who needed protection, but as capable children who had survived harsh conditions. And that look carried a deep respect. One evening, as they ate together, the woodcutter spoke. "I will never leave anyone behind again," he said. "No matter the cost." Hansel looked at the table. He took Gretel's hand. They understood the meaning of those words better than anyone. The forest was still there. The witch's house might be gone. But the tale was not over. For some stories are not completed by a happy ending, but by the lesson learned.